If the idea of God creating the world and man in his image is the basis on which to understand how the world of economics works, and therefore the alienation between God and man works its way through the entire system, leading to a shrinkage in production, a shrinkage in the amount of wealth created, a lack of investment, and valuations that express a large amount of risk in the stock and bond market. And we make it worse by turning to the state as a new God, and this so clearly works itself out in history. Then why in the world don't the people in charge of things see the problem clearly and do something about it? That's the question that people ask me most often when I present the basics of classical economics from a God-centered point of view to groups of homeschoolers, business executives, entrepreneurs, and investors, and everyone in between. They always say, yes, this makes sense, so why don't they see it? And the reason they don't see it is because they don't want to see it. And the reason they don't want to see it is because these factors that determine economic growth, the relationship of God to man to the earth, man to production, economics, finance, and politics, are based on the idea of being held together by God. God is the linchpin of this system. He is the one in whom it coheres. And since in virtually every elite center of economic life, financial life, political life, and academia has based its worldview on either taking God and pushing him out of the picture entirely, or relegating him at the very least to someplace far away from relevance to human affairs, to this world, where he is a blind watchmaker, perhaps, or a grandfather who's looking from a distance, not intimately involved with the life of his creation. When that happens, when God is moved to there, and the linchpin is removed, everything falls apart and life doesn't make sense anymore. And so man is no longer seen as being related to the earth. He's no longer seen as someone who's supposed to work the earth. He's seen as someone who harms the earth. And when mankind engages in the creation and tries to make it something more productive, that's seen as harmful, as a despoilization, as a violation of the pristine nature of the creation. And man is separated from production. We don't see human beings as a source of production. We don't see the emergence of new generations as a source of prosperity. We see high abortion rates, or the lack of family creation as the source of prosperity. So we separate the human race from the production process. And we separate the production process, therefore, from economics. There's a severing, a disintegration of those cause and effect relationships. And we even sever consumption from investment. The foundation of modern economics under John Maynard Keynes, the Cambridge apostle, the professor, the university professor who set his life to destroying this classical model, started with the rejection of God as foundational to his thinking and his circle of friends, and ended up denying all cause and effect relationships and all basic economic and fundamental principles, and came to believe what his elders had taught him. The superiority of thrift and investment was in fact a bad thing, and that investment is loss. That money that's invested is lost to the economy and is bad for the economy and creates economic stagnation. And he called this the paradox of thrift. We shouldn't save. Saving is bad. So consumption and investment are severed from one another. And we don't see the relationship, therefore, between investment and the yield curve. We don't see the relationship between investment and the credit markets. We don't see that the basis of the credit markets is that somebody says, I'm going to work and not eat what I grew today, or not eat what I built today. I'm going to defer my gratification in the future. That's the basis of economic growth, and that's the basis of capital markets. And Keynes said, no. We don't need savings to do it. The government can print money. We can have a credit market with no risk and abundant capital without anybody actually saving. And so you have a severing of the relationship between investment and evaluation of stocks and bonds. And then along comes academic portfolio theory, the modern approach to portfolio management. And it says, in the beginning, at the very start of the emergence of this school of thought, which now dominates all of academia and most of the financial sector, the very beginning, during the Nobel Prize acceptance speech given by the founder of this school, is he says, I'm going to ignore production and I'm going to ignore consumption. And so how do you value assets? How do you value stock investments or bond investments in a situation like that? If you've severed the cause and effect relationship, how are you able to say whether stocks are properly valued or improperly valued? And what happens is technical analysis and academic portfolio theory start to look at this market, the stock and the bond market, as being driven entirely by our emotions, by the emotions of the crowd and by my emotions or your emotions in relation to the crowd. No objective reality, no cause and effect. And what this does is this ignores not only the economic fundamentals, which should determine valuation. Growth is good for stocks and bonds. Inflation is bad for stocks and bonds because investments are promises to give you cash in the future. And if that cash isn't worth anything, then that's a risk to you. And so what we do is we sever the relationship between government action and investment. And so Wall Street tends to focus on stock and bond markets as being a world unto themselves, completely insulated from political actions or from economics. And that is the very basis of the academic dogma of modern portfolio theory. And so what do we have? When we remove God entirely from the picture or relegate him, we end up with a fragmented worldview. Nothing fits together. We move away from cause and effect relationships to the study of God being basically a curiosity or a source of inspiration. The study of the earth is how do you protect it from man? The study of man is that leads to the conclusion that we don't want too many people, that man is a threat to the world, that population growth, that zero population growth is better for economic growth, that high abortion rates are good for the future of a nation. And therefore we sever that from the productive process, from the process of being effectively productive in managing resources. And that gets severed from economics. And economics gets severed within itself, consumption versus investment. And that gets severed from the capital markets. And so these are separate universes, almost like a polytheistic world with many gods. Right, a God of the sun, a God of the sky, a God of the earth. And now we have different gods, a God of sociology, a God of ecology, a God of management, a God of economics, a God of finance, and a God of the state, who's really the greatest of the gods, the one who holds it all together. The problem is, this God is inferior to this God. This God can create. This God can't. This God can create money, but he can't create wealth. He says, where this God has failed you, I will succeed. But in fact, all this God can do is confiscate the production, the abundance that we get from the true God, and shrink our economic prospects, shrink our productive process. This God can confiscate and he can print, raising risk levels, doing exactly the opposite of what he calls for. And the reason people can't see the relationships between these things is because the modern world is a fragmented worldview with no God to hold it together. Cause and effect relationships are erased from human consciousness, and we're left with chaos, isolated, disintegrated chaos. But that's just the way that the modern man sees the world. That's not the way the world really is. And so there is a way out, and we're going to talk about that next.